Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so as you guys know, we had the Speed Chess Championships on chess.com. It's been a little while since it got over with, but we had Wesley versus Nodirbek Abdusattorov from Uzbekistan. And, so I've just been going over some of the games that they played between each other. And I have another one here right now for you, and it's from the 21st round. And it's the bullet section, so this is a 1-1 game. As you guys know from bullet chess, can produce some pretty crazy games. Some real kamikaze type of play. A lot of the thing that you want to do when you're playing bullet against somebody is try to throw them off as much as possible. So, you kind of see a lot of that in the game. So that's how the games can be so far up and down and stuff like that. But, like I said before, Wesley did win the match that they played. It was 18-10. And like I said before, they do 3 hours of chess. So they have a certain period of time where they do 5-1 blitz. They have a certain amount of time they do 3-1 blitz. And then they have they finish it off with the 1-1 bullet. And so, like I said, this is one of the games from their bullet. This is round 21. And if you guys are ready, I'm ready. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what we have here. All right, so we have E4 starting off. All right, so we have C6. So we have the Caro-Kann again. All right, knight to F3. We got D5. All right, D3, just still following, the same lines as we did during that last game. All right, queen to C7. All right, we have E5, a slight difference in the game that I showed before. All right, so bishop to G4. All right, so we have D4, just trying to make sure we protect that pawn here on E5. Because, of course, bishop takes, queen takes. This queen is going to take this pawn with check, so that's never somewhere you want to be. All right, so we have E6, knight B to D2. All right, so we have C5, and like I said before, as crazy as it sounds, we have a brand new game here. This position, even though it looks very generic, and this position probably has been seen before, it is a brand new game as far as the database is concerned. With this series of moves, this particular tempo in the game, we've never seen this position actually come up in the database. Now, of course, on chess.com or Lead Chess or whatever else you might play on, there's millions and millions and millions of games that have come up, and so it's possible that it's been seen before, in the log of chess.com or of Lead Chess. But as far as the actual database is concerned, this is the first time this position has been seen. All right, so moving on a little bit here, we have H3. All right, so bishop takes F3, knight takes F3, pawn takes D4. We got a little intermezzo in there. We're going to go ahead and throw bishop to B5 check. Not in a hurry to grab that pawn. As you guys can see, there's no more C pawn. So there isn't really a whole lot of extra defense that this pawn can receive. Of course, you have knight to C6 that can come. Maybe bishop C5 and stuff. But there's already 2 times of pressure on this pawn. So, the pawn is pretty much going to be gone at some point coming up. All right, so we have knight to C6, just blocking that check there. All right, we have castles. Like I said, Wesley Snow's not in a hurry to take that pawn. That pawn is going to drop at some point regardless. All right, so we have bishop to C5. All right, knight takes D4, so he goes, he takes the pawn now here. All right, so we have knight to E7. And like I said before, you don't have to denote exactly which knight moved to E7 because as you guys can see, this knight is pinned to the king. Let me fix that. This knight is pinned to the king, so there's not a way for this knight to legally move. So, since this knight is the only one that can move, you just can say knight to E7. All right, so we have bishop to E3. And we have bishop back to B6. Now, if we go ahead and go into like a slightly different variation. So let's say, for example, instead of bishop to B6, black goes, let's say they castle here in this position. For those of you that want to go ahead and stop the video and take a look and see as white, what would you do here? We'll be waiting for you. Like I said, go ahead and take a couple of seconds or, a couple of minutes, however long you want to take. And see, based on the cluster of pieces here in the middle, if there's something that you can notice about the position as white and black, and catch up with us in a second. We'll be waiting for you here. All right, cool. So for those of you that noticed that this bishop is undefended and this queen is a little bit further away from this e6 pawn. It's in the jumping distance of this e6 pawn. If you guys found knight to e6, I applaud you. Great job. You know, you guys have a very tactical, tactical perception and vision. As you guys can see from this move here, knight takes e6. Like I said, this bishop is undefended, and this, this move here is exploiting the fact that this queen is also undefended, but it is on the direct path of the knight here. So you've actually won a pawn in this position. So if we just kind of follow a series of moves that would result from this, we have f takes e6, we have bishop takes c5, we have knight takes e5. All right, so bishop takes e7, queen takes e7. Go ahead and throw a little attack on that knight there with queen to d4, and we'll go ahead and back the knight up to g6, rook a to e1. Rook to c8, rook a to c8, bishop back to d3. And so, as you guys can see in this position, the pawns are equal, but black has these three pawn islands, and white has the two pawn islands here, and they also have a backward pawn on e6. This is considerably better for white. And it stems, like I said, going back to the initial position. It all stems from this position that we saw here, as far as this bishop being undefended. So I say all the time, guys, when you see undefended pieces, you always have to try to see if there's a way that you can to exploit the undefended piece. And as you guys can see in this position, this queen and this bishop are both undefended. That is where this knight to e6 move comes into play. Gets you a little in between, or just to discover an attack on this bishop and the queen at the same time. So, those are definitely situations where, you can try to take advantage of some undefended pieces here. But getting back to the position that we had. So we had bishop back to b6. All right, so we had c3. And we had queen takes e5. Now, for those of you that are wondering, that is an actual just pawn. This previous move, c3, really didn't do anything to defend against the pawn. f4 definitely would have been something that, would have been a little bit better in this position to, just defend that e5 pawn. And so, like I said, c3, the knight was already defended twice by the bishop and the queen. So you didn't really have any situation where, you can exploit this. Also, like I said, this knight is pinned, so there wasn't really a way that you could have taken advantage of the knight being there on d4 anyway. So moving on, we have rook to e1. Just trying to see if, the queen stays there, we can get a little discovery going on. All right, so we have queen to f6. All right, queen to g4. All right, we have castles. All right, bishop to g5. All right, so we have queen to g6, pinning that bishop to the queen a little bit. Of course, the queen is defended, but there's a little question mark here as far as this bishop being here, being only defended by the queen. All right, so we have rook a to d1, and we have h6. And so if we actually just take a look at a side variation, this is actually something that Abdusattorov. Yeah, I need to fix that. Okay, Abdusattorov actually missed, and it was h5 here, and so h5 causes a pretty big problem for white because the queen is trying to hold on to the defense of this bishop here. It's also kind of laterally defending this knight. And so, this h5 move really puts a big question to the queen, and it really doesn't give the queen very many options. So, what black is trying to do is just trying to overload the queen here. And so we would have queen back to g3. Bishop would take d4, and, of course, you're not going to, try to take back with the rook. You're just going to lose in exchange. So, we have pawn takes d4, and we'd have knight to f5. And so, as you guys can see, these series of moves here are causing a lot of problems for this queen. This queen at the moment is trying to hold on to this bishop, this pawn. Let me see here. This pawn is being double attacked now. Also, the queen is being attacked. So you can see that this particular variation would have been considerably stronger. So if you just go a couple more moves down, probably the best thing you want to do is probably try to pin that knight down to the queen. So bishop to d3. We'd have knight c takes d4, queen to f4, trying to get the queen out of that line of fire with the knight. Rook a to e8, and like I said, if you guys could look at this position here, I mean, white is down 2 whole pawns. This queen is desperately trying to hang on to this bishop, You know, this pawn is going to start rolling and you're going to start getting a lot of tempo and stuff like that on these pieces here in the middle. And so, you know, this is definitely a much better position for black. So it definitely would have been a much better route to go. And so, all right, so we have bishop takes e7. All right, so we have queen takes g4, pawn takes g4, knight takes e7, and we have f4. And as you guys can see, this pawn here is, you know, trying to keep this this knight from hopping into this square here. All right, so we have rook a to d8. All right, so we have f4, you know, taking advantage of the pin here on this e file. All right, so we have rook to d6. All right, king to h2. All right, so we have bishop to c7. Now this is kind of an artificial threat. You know, there's not really a threat of a discovery against this king. Because like Wesley so does, he sidesteps it with king to h3. And so, you know, there's not really a whole lot more that, you know, can be accomplished with this bishop coming here. So it wasn't the most solid threat to give to white here. All right, so we have a6, trying to knock that bishop back a little bit. All right, so we have bishop to a4. All right, so we have rook to b6. All right, so we have pawn takes on e6. We have f takes e6. So if you just kind of look at a little side variation here, let's say you get let's say you turn into Yasser Seirawan and you start pawn grubbing, right? You know, we're going to have a little bit of a problem here. So we'd have f takes e takes f7 check. You know, just to defend the knight, we'd take back with the rook on f7, and then we'd have bishop to e8. And as you guys can see, this rook doesn't really have anywhere it can go. It's kind of a bad situation. I mean, this rook is now overloaded. It's trying to you know, defend this knight, but you know, as you guys can see, it doesn't really have anywhere to go. So you definitely want to be careful in this particular position, just trying to grab pawns. Like I said, so we have f takes e6. All right, so we have knight takes e6, giving an attack to the the rook and the bishop. All right, so we have rook to c8. But unfortunately, that bishop, as you guys saw from the previous variation, this bishop is causing a lot of problems to this rook. And so, you know, you kind of have a decision. Are you going to give away the rook, lose the exchange, or you're going to give away an entire bishop? So Abdusattorov decides that he wants to go ahead and, you know, just take the loss of the exchange here. So we have bishop takes c8, knight takes c8, knight back to d4. And so, you know, of course, in this position, like as before, you know, you don't want to start pawn snatching, because you're going to run into rook to e8 check. And that's definitely not something you want to be, because, you know, that knight is going to, you know, drop pretty quickly here. And so we have knight back to e7. All right, so we have b3, you know, getting the crucial tempo that we need to save this pawn here. All right, so we have knight to g6. All right, so we have g3. Like I said before, guys, you know, just trying to restrict the movement of this knight as much as possible here. All right, so we have bishop to e5, and get those arrows off the board here. All right, so we have bishop to e5. All right, so we have rook to d3. All right, rook to f6. All right, knight to f5, just blocking this rook's path. You know, this is one of the only files that this rook has the ability to try to come on. You know, you always want to try to put your rooks on open files and everything. And so, all right, so we have rook back to, rook to c6. All right, so we're doubling rooks on the third rank here. Rook to e3. Rook e to e3. You have to specify which one here. All right, so we have rook takes d5, just winning a clear pawn. You know, of course, if you have something like bishop takes c3, you know, you're gonna try to knock the rook away from the protection of this bishop. And so, you know, you have to try to save the bishop somehow. So you have bishop to a1. Rook comes up to e8 with check. King down to f7. We have rook over to b8. You know, just putting a question on this pawn here on b7. So that pretty much forces a trade here. So we have rook takes d6, knight takes d6, you know, king down to e6, and then we'd have knight takes b7. And so you know, we've managed to snatch a pawn here. All right, and so we have you know, just trying to sidestep all that. We have king to h7, and we have c4. All right, so we have b5. And so we have pawn takes b5, pawn takes b5, and we have rook takes b5. And so as you guys can see now, you know, white is up 2 clear pawns. You know, they were in a little bit of trouble earlier with those variations I showed you and stuff like that, but now we have you know, a pretty good position for white here. All right, so we have rook down to c2, and so we have a4 just protecting that pawn there. All right, so we have knight to f8. All right, so we have a5. You know, passed pawns must be pushed, and we have, you know, perfectly good connected passed pawns over here on the queen side. All right, so we have king to g6. All right, knight to h4 with check. All right, so we have king to f7. All right, knight to f3. All right, knight to h7. All right, so we have b4. You know, it's always good when you have rook in games with connected passed pawns to try to advance them in this fashion. You know, basically just advancing them to this point and then moving the rook up. And then, you know, you have the ability to advance this one, and move rook back up. So it's kind of a little series that you'll do to try to advance pawns as much as possible here. All right, so we have rook to a2, just trying to prevent the further push of this a pawn here. All right, so we have rook to b7, giving check to the king here, asking it what it wants to do. Now, of course, all right, so we have king to g6, but of course, if we have you know, king to f8, you might see a variation like so. You know, king would go to f8. We would see rook to e6. You know, rook to a3, just giving a little attack on this knight here, and we see rook to c6. And in this position, there's not a lot you can do. Let me fix this camera here. Yeah, there's not a whole lot you can do here. You know, this check is coming, and like I said, I mean, there's not a whole lot of space that the king has to move. And if we also see, let's say, rook to g8 or king to g8, you know, we'd see the immediate rook to e8 check. Knight back to f8. You know, the king was stalemated, and then we just see the other rook, rook b to b8 coming. And, you know, in this position, there's not a lot that you can do. I mean, the only way you can try to, you know, possibly, you know, do something. I mean, you know, of course, if bishop comes back, you have rook taken and, you know, just trying to step the king down. But that, you know, of course, that drops a piece. So you're not living a pretty good life here. And so, you know, like I said, we had king to g6. All right, so we had knight to h4 check, king down to g5. And you have rook to f3. And now this is the position that Abdusattorov actually resigns because, you know, there's just, you're in a complete mating net. You know, you have this square covered, this square covered, this pawn is covered, and this is, you know, rook to f5 is the next move that's coming. And, you know, pretty much the only way to defend against that is you have to give the rook up. You know, you have to deflect the king away from the protection of this pawn and, you know, force the king to take here. And then you'll be able to have something like this. But, you know, it's, you know, this, you know, you can even maybe do something like this over here. You know, the bishop doesn't come, maybe possibly take this. But, you know, you have these two pieces against this knight. And, you know, if you just wanted to have fun just for no reason, even if the knight was to move here or something like that, you might could have something like that and just clear every piece off the board. Which is something I personally do when I'm playing bullet. But as you can see here, this is a 1000% one position. And so, like I said, Abdusattorov actually resigns in this position, and it gives Wesley So another win. And like I said, he did win 18-10 in the entire series. So that is the round 21 game, Wesley So versus Nodirbek Abdusattorov. And I'll be coming at you with another game. But I appreciate you stopping by. Go ahead and give me a subscribe and a like and leave some comments down. Let me know something else you want to see or anything else I can do. And I appreciate you guys coming through. All right, we'll see you.